Welcome everyone. Today we have a new episode, and this episode based on 3D printed house. And we have our expert, especially our technology expert, Mr. Rob. We have our climate activist, Mr. Alex, as well as Ali Rice. They will come up with a different idea how we can work with this 3D printed things. So I want to start with Mr. Rob. How do you want to introduce this point, especially 3D printed house or this technology, how we can implement?
Sure. 3D printing is still relatively new in the market. It's kind of the same position that computing was pre-Apple. Much of what you see in the environment are either large-scale industrial printers like Hewlett-Packard has, or personal printers provided by a bunch of vendors for mostly hobbyists. The house printing thing is newer yet. They discovered that you could use concrete or some types of plastics to build homes. The homes we're talking about tend to be relatively small, 1-2 bedroom, though I've seen up to a 4-bedroom house done in trial. Typical build times are around 24 hours to build the home. Materials tend to be concrete mostly, though they can also use plastics. And they can be used for a number of things. One of the more interesting things is for disaster relief, where they put the houses up very quickly, and then they use materials that are biodegradable, so that when they tear them down, it doesn't create another problem for the environment. Disadvantages to the homes, to the 3D printed homes right now, is that limitation of materials. I mean, you're pretty much stuck with mostly concrete, and then you still have to have somebody come in as a finish carpenter and do the interior trimming, install the windows. Often the ceiling and roof are done in a different process, though I've seen 3D printed homes where they also printed the roof as well. And so it's not a turnkey. In other words, you have this image of a 3D printed home where the machine comes in and 24 hours later you move into a finished house. We're not quite there yet. Closest thing to that in building are some of the homes that are built in factories using techniques like they use to build aircraft. And those homes are actually pretty spectacular. And they're starting to use 3D printing even for those modular homes in the factory, which may be the near-term future, where you 3D print the components, the walls, the floor, the roof, and then you assemble it on site, so you don't have to take the 3D printer and move it. And then finally, one of the major benefits of 3D printed homes is not just the speed; it's the cost. In our recent trial here in the United States, which was the article I sent in when I first proposed this topic, the build cost of the house was substantially less than the build cost when you used total manual labor. And once again, of course, the speed was quite a bit higher. So ideally, right now, it's used when you need to build a lot of houses fast, like for disaster relief. But some of the new cities of the future are now being designed with the idea that perhaps large portions of them will be printed and not built. So it's an amazing area, and one that's going through an awful lot of change right now. Now, one of the other negatives, of course, is housing is heavily unionized, and whenever you decide to do anything that doesn't use union members, you can have some serious problems with strikes, and we'll have to get through that. I recall the technology site that Cisco built in Toronto a few years back, showcasing smart building and offices, and with smart lighting, lights are connected via Ethernet. They're not connected via wiring, so you don't use electricians. And the electricians union shut down the project for a long period of time, because their view is if it's a light, it's installed by an electrician, even though you're not really using an electrician to install it. So getting around some of the past practices, regulatory, and then of course bringing up people so that they're trained to build these houses. Those are all limiting the advancement of the technology, but it's on the forefront and it's on the rise. The price advantage, the cost advantage, the environmental advantages are increasing, and it's going to be really hard to say no to a 3D printed house once we finally get to scale.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, sir. Ali Rice, how do you want to introduce this point?
Okay, so I'm just interested in kind of a more sustainable future and alternative affordable housing. So that's why I'm here, and definitely in the UK. There's a kind of a resistance to do anything alternative. So I think people still see houses as, you know, brick houses with a roof, and you know, and there's very much, you know, the Three Little Pigs story. There's people still are quite resistant to even timber framed houses. So I think there's massive room to kind of adapt and change, especially, you know, when affordable housing is really needed all over the UK. So yeah, so it's more yeah, I'm just interested to be part of the conversation and see where it goes.
Thank you. Alex, you are an activist. So how do you want to share your views about 3D printed house and this technology?
Yes, hello, good morning, everyone.
Yeah,
So first, I'm really excited about, yeah, what's that?
Sorry.
No problem. Yeah, I was gonna say that I'm really excited about 3D houses in general. I think that it is a step in the right direction in regards to efficiency and sustainability, and I look forward to the new developments with using technology to print houses. Rob covered a lot of the key subjects. You know, some of the benefits. I do like that they're faster to build. So we are able to hopefully house more people faster, regardless if it's after emergencies. I also like the fact that they're lower in cost, they're faster to build. Hopefully we can use 3D printing, the 3D printing technology of homes to house some of the homeless people, the homeless populations, whether it's regionally or internationally. I think it would help solve the homelessness issue, and there's pros and cons because it could help house the homeless people, like I'm just mentioning, but then at the same time, I think there is the aspect that it helps or supports increasing the divide between the rich and the poor, because the people that can afford the technology and that are making the money in printing 3D homes are probably you know, some of the larger companies and corporations, and they're also putting people out of work. So there are pros and cons regarding that. As we continue to have these discussions about technology, artificial intelligence, robotics, automation, better software, more efficiency throughout our society, I think we will see more jobs, you know, the jobs reduced because of 3D printing homes. So again, there are pros and cons of both of them. I do like the environmental aspect that they are more efficient. I think it's much more efficient than all the energy and labor and the environmental impact going into building, you know, a wood home from start to finish. I also think that so concrete, there's a huge environmental impact when it comes to concrete regarding to carbon and all of that. But I do think concrete homes last a lot longer, and they'll last through generations with potentially less maintenance. And I also think they're more prone towards regarding hurricanes, tornadoes, the superstorms of the future, and they're just more durable and more resistant. So I think there's some of those advantages. I do know that we started printing, I mean, some of the basics. I mean, we've printed products, you know, things out of plastics and little gifts and little things in the technology industry. We've also been able to print, you know, 3D print food items, which they're now doing. And then we've advanced so much that we're actually printing human organs using cells. So we're still at the beginning of these technologies and what we're able to do with this. Right now, we are using concrete to print 3D homes. Rob mentioned plastic. I hope in the future we can start incorporating the hempcrete with 3D printed homes. And for those of you that don't know, hempcrete is basically just hemp and concrete, but it makes the concrete much stronger and more resilient to storms. It also helps with carbon sequestration. So I don't know if hempcrete is waterproof, but I'm sure there's ways that they can work on that. So again, those are some of the things that I wanted to talk about. Yeah, it's high energy environmental impact. There are pros and cons of this, and I'd love to hear from the panelists and learn more about those things. Yeah, thank you.
Dr. William, how are you today? Thank you for joining today's sessions. So how do you want to introduce this point, this 3D printed house? And
something wrong with my connection, and there's something wrong with mine.
Okay. Well, well, what I can say is thank you for having me. It's always great to be here again, and I really dig this. And I'm going to do something I think a bit different, and that's because I just learned this the other day. They are doing a mapping, a digital mapping of the Statue of David in Greece by Da Vinci. And they are going to 3D print replicas of them. Now, I know that's not a home. I know that's not, where you can cook. But if we can take the ancient examples of art and print them with 3D printers, then I know Alex is right on point. And Alex, I do just want to give a shout out, just so you know, because I'm not sure our audience knows, that 3D printing is just another version of what you've already been doing by building homes for the homeless. And your example and your work stands on its own. So, with that having been said, I do want to apologize for being late to the party. Rob, good to see you again. And what it is a challenge, homelessness, the need for affordable, constructive, thoughtful ways that we approach what we need to do is important. 3D printing has always amazed me. I did not know that we could build houses with it. I did not know that we could build the Statue of David with it. I did not know any number of things, but I'm just glad to be here for this moment. So, with that, welcome. I have
Thank you,
William.
Mr. Rob. Thank you, Mr. Rob. Actually, I have a very important question because from Malaysia, we are from Cyberjazz Asian School of Business in their innovation lab. I observed that like this 3D printed and this kind of technology they are trying to implementing. So, but beside that, we are observing, like especially in Asia Pacific, huge infrastructures and architectural development happening, as we are very near in China. So China is very advanced in kind of like construction technologies and other things. But my question is that when, like example, next year or next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, we will see more 3D printed house and infrastructures in our ecosystem. What do you think? Or is it practically possible, or we need more research and development?
Well, no, the technology is actually reasonably advanced. They're actually building homes now. So the equipment's expensive. It does require training. But recognize in a lot of areas, for instance, where I live, we've got a huge shortage of finished carpenters. We've got more work than we have people, and quite a bit more. We're kind of going through a huge building boom here, and the end result is the 3D printing won't take away jobs. It'll just get production up to work and meet demand. The mismatch of demand and available houses is doing some incredibly expensive things to our housing market, which is good if you've got a house. Pretty bad if you don't have one, and we've got a fairly significant homeless problem here in Oregon. So being able to scale up 3D printers to particularly deal with either disaster relief or homelessness is probably the low-hanging fruit for this, because you can build these things relatively quickly, relatively cheaply, and they're not, initially they were kind of eyesores, but now the homes are starting to look pretty decent. And as Alex pointed out, concrete has some advantages, probably not so much in earthquake areas where you can get a lot of cracking, but in areas where you have high winds, concrete holds up really well. And areas where you've got flooding, you don't quite have the same problems with mold that you have with other building materials. It strikes me as funny though, back when I worked for Disney, which is when I was far younger, they had the House of the Future, which was built in the 1950s. and they used fiberglass, and it was I'll post a link in a few minutes, but it was an amazing structure, and I was there when they tore it down, and it was kind of funny because they had the house, they brought in the wrecking crew, and the wrecking ball went in, and they took the windows out first, and that wrecking ball swung at that fiberglass house, and it hit the house wall, and it bounced,
off, yeah,
like a super ball. I mean, I was kind of surprised it didn't take the crane out. Eventually, they had to bring in people with chainsaws, and they had to cut it up. You could not destroy the house without cutting it up. And to this day, I look at the problems we've had with hurricanes and high wind damage and flooding, because if you remember, the house of the future was actually raised, so it would have handled flooding very well as well. And instead of adopting that house of the future, I mean, we're still using building designs that were considered contemporary in the New York World's Fair in the 1930s. So we haven't really advanced a lot here. Yeah, the electronics and some of the piping and internals of the houses have changed from copper to plastic, and certainly we've gone to rubber as opposed to material for wire insulation. Thank God. Otherwise, most of us would be dead, burned out of our homes. But we really haven't advanced the building of homes that much until just now, when they've applied 3D printing to the process, and arguably it's safer, cheaper, faster, and it can be made more resilient than, because you could certainly use, in earthquake areas, you could certainly use membranes to separate the concrete parts so that they actually moved and they didn't crack, or you just use another material, a plastic blend. Though, as we mentioned in an earlier show, plastics are a problem in and of themselves because they're a byproduct of chemicals. If you're going to get rid of petrochemicals, you're pretty much going to lose the plastics. But it doesn't mean you couldn't use other variants. Alex mentioned hemp-based concrete, which is high. It's has a decent R value. It insulates fairly well, and as I understand it, can be used in certain 3D printing machines to print the materials. And so the end result is that kept features in front of us. Plus, another material you could use, in theory, is they're using old tires, which we're probably going to have for a while. For roads, nothing says you couldn't use some of those same materials, at least for the outside of the house. You'd have some outgassing problems for interior, but you could certainly use it for the exterior of the house. And then a lot of these homes are built with a dead area between the external and internal walls for insulation. And so you could use the tires to the outside and then apply the insulation on the inside.
Nice, good point.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Mr. Junil, can you hear me?
He's very dark. I think he's having internet problems.
I think so. Mr. Alex, so you are an activist, and you have engagement with a lot of relief work, and especially in developing nations you have engagement. Also, you are developing a project, housing projects for homeless people. So what do you think, how it works? Because I'm very much interested about this 3D printed. In the developing nation, housing is the biggest problem. And what I understand that price also very important factor, that it definitely its price for developing 3D printed house, its cost will be lower than a regular concrete and this kind of building. So how it works, and what do you think? Is it sustainable in the developing nations, or what do you want to share?
Yes. So again, when you weigh the pros and cons, or look at the environmental aspect of the project, I think that when we build things that are stronger and more durable, eventually over the long run, it will lower the environmental impact of that specific project, that design, that model, or whatever we're buying. Right now, we live in a disposable society. That's why everything's just single use, and we're just throwing it all away, and it's ending up back in the landfills. I mean, that's just for profit. We're just making things the cheapest and most efficient way, but we're not thinking about the long-term environmental impacts. And with taking that into consideration, we got to think so here in Santa Cruz, where I live, there's a whole street where it's all Victorian houses, where they built really good, high quality houses that have lasted 100 years. Same thing with San Francisco. Nowadays, we're just, even the width of 2x4s has gone down, and the type of construction materials. So I think this does give us a lot more flexibility with using higher quality building materials, and they will last longer in different areas. I liked what Rob just mentioned, and he pointed out the potential, how it can be susceptible towards earthquakes, but maybe we could work around that and we could figure out solutions. And we are headed in the right direction, I feel, with 3D printed homes. So as we talk about affordable housing and homelessness, we've all seen the images that we just brought up on the screen, and the main images regarding just like a single family home or the tiny home version. But I think that there's going to be a lot more applications. I mean, they're starting to do businesses with it. They're starting to work on like larger apartment complex projects. And I think it's not just about affordable homes or low income homes. I do think that we're going to start seeing a lot of high quality homes and like multi-million-dollar homes built with 3D printing. So I don't think it's just going to be limited. I think there's a lot of applications we can put this towards, and we are headed in a good direction. So there's a couple different versions of 3D printed homes, and I'll try to explain. So there's the one where it's just the basic wall, and it's only so thick. And then, as Rob mentioned, there's also that inside space that would normally be sheetrock in a home. But there's these new designs which you can do with 3D printed homes that you cannot do with basic construction techniques, to where they can change the angles and they make it I guess if you search graphene and you see how graphene's like interconnected and layered and stacked, how they're just making them stronger. Maybe there's a term for that, where it's not solid but it's broken down. And I did send Sharif an image. So it just makes the walls stronger, and you use less building materials, but it makes it stronger and more resilient. So I think we're going to explore that more in the future. I like the term that Rob just used with what was that? Finished carpentry.
Yeah.
So that's like a branch of the construction industry where someone is a finished carpenter, to where they don't do. So some of the initial steps when building a house is maybe the framers, and then you have the plumbers, electricians, and then towards the end, you have the finished carpenters and the painters. So you have all these different branches of construction. A general contractor knows all of those different methods, and he's well educated and experienced in those different aspects. But when we have that takes people power and employees and insurance and all of those different things to build a home. But when we're talking about 3D printing homes, a lot of those jobs or those those areas are cut out, because it's all like in a kit with the 3D printed home while you're doing it, and it just cuts out some of those things. So that again expedites time and makes it more efficient. And I do love what Rob mentioned again about the Disney home and the fiberglass. And again, that's just them spending more money building something high quality and thinking outside of the box, thinking of new building materials that can be used. So when it comes to my personal micro tiny home project, I am building these micro tiny homes that are durable, low cost, environmentally friendly, with the best construction materials that I can find. So there's big multi-million-dollar mansions, and there's regular family-size homes, and then there's tiny homes. So what I'm building is a micro tiny home. It's designed as like an emergency shelter, basically, and as we see the humanitarian crisis aspect of homelessness around the world. So there definitely would be an application for 3D printing my micro tiny homes, and I have considered building the frame with wood and pouring concrete and actually designing mine with a concrete mold to make my projects more efficient, and just being able to duplicate my micro tiny homes at a faster rate. And I think that we are seeing the increase in the human population, and we are consuming resources, Earth's finite resources, beyond Earth's ability to regenerate those. And I think we can incorporate new methods of materials and building these, again, like hempcrete. I would love to have the ability for us to take all the plastic waste, melt it down, and 3D print, plastic. But the main reason why we probably wouldn't do that is the off-gassing of the toxic chemicals into the home or into a confined space. And if that wasn't an issue, I think we'd probably be printing homes out of plastic waste in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Dr. William, one point I just want to know from you, because affordable housing is a big issue right now in Asia Pacific. Do you think this 3D printed house can help this kind of government initiative like affordable housing systems and these things? I think every government, what I know from Malaysia, Indonesia, Vietnam, Bangladesh, Pakistan, India, many countries has this kind of projects. How do you want to interlink this new technology with this affordable housing project?
Okay, well, I begin by simply saying this, that one of the considerations that policymakers should be thinking about is that at its core, this has to be a measure of the economies of scale. Now, it's great right now because it's a specialty kind of thing. So we can talk about it, and maybe it's an exotic question. But as you scale up, given the amount of people that we need to house for developing countries, economies of scale will then make it all easier. And all of the innovations that Rob and Alex have talked about and have raised so far will become that much more important. But once we get to that scale where we can easily replicate without horrendous entry costs to 3D printing or hempcrete, then we'll see that it will be, in fact, something that will be in our toolbox that everybody can use, countries and nations. And I don't want to necessarily, well, let me try this way. I think China has already been dealing with the issue of housing. They have billions of people. So does India. And they have been on the exploring cutting edge of these matters. And so we have to really look towards them, at least in part, to see where the future might be. But I wholly endorse all of it, and I was to just suggest to policymakers around the world and the governments in the Pan-Asia Pacific that we look in that direction. Dr. Sharif.
Thank you. Ali Rice, can you hear me? Ali, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, I love to know more about.
It's kind of intermittent,
Yes.
but I can, yeah.
Yes,
I can,
yes.
yeah.
I
Can you hear me?
okay. Thank you. Yes, I can hear you. Like I love to know more about UK situation in terms of housings. Even I know that UK more love to like handle or manage their previous infrastructures and architectural beauties. But beside that, what about the new technology, especially 3D printed things? Uh, what about the advancement, technological advancement in UK? Ali, can
Yeah.
you hear me?
That shows a lot of alternative designers called grand design. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes,
Oh no. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Cool. No, one in England that showcases alternative designs is called grand designs. And interestingly, that's one of the showcases that actually moves building forward, so it shows possibility. And I think most of the people featured on that are South builders, and they kind of showcase what's possible. And quite often those actually do modular homes, build in alternative ways. So they demonstrate that there's ways of actually building a house that's much more affordable, that kind of translates in a different way. So there's key areas. I think in London they've done programs for homeless people when they've used shipping containers and converted those.
Mm-hmm.
So that there is the same problems as they've mentioned over in the States as there is here, and that there's lots of homeless people or people that need small spaces to live in, and most houses are, that they can't afford them in London because the rent or the mortgages are so expensive. So there's definitely the same problems here. But I think it's the self-builders or the people that prototype things that are going to convince people or authorities that there's different ways to go. So until there's actual real kind of sites where there's evidence that it's a workable aesthetic, I think there needs to be small projects that demonstrate it's workable.
Thank you. We have our new guest, Mr. Lin. Yes. Yes, we have our new friend, Mr. Lin. So we are discussing about 3D printed house projects, and I know that you are a very successful businessman and you love technology. So how do you want to share your experience, especially about housing projects? And if you want to share your views about 3D printed house.
Don't laugh, Bill.
Come on, man.
Nice to see you, Bill. It's been a while.
I know. Good to see you, Lynn.
Yes. So my experience with housing goes back well before there was 3D printing. So I'm a stick builder. Let's put it that way. I was in the real estate investment business for years. We bought a lot of apartments, office buildings, shopping centers. They were all basically concrete foundations or block foundations with pre-framed walls in most cases, pre-framed trusses for the roofs. So the thought of using 3D printing, I'm not sure structurally how that can work for housing, quite honestly, because there has to be a lot of strength. Think about it, with the snow that we have right now. And excuse me 1 second, Bill, but think about the weight of snow. The weight of snow that we have here in the Northeast, sitting on your roof, can add maybe 3,000 pounds. But if it gets wet, as much as 10,000 pounds on top of the roof. And how do you do 3D printing to be able to support that kind of weight that you may get from snow? So anyway, Bill, you were going to make a comment.
No, just an observation, Lynn, and that was actually two now. One, it's good to see you again. You always look good. Second, simply this, that it seems to me for our audience around the world, and Dr. Sharif, please, and it's simply this, that there was a time when we did not necessarily consider, or it was a taboo to talk about prefab homes, that is, homes that were manufactured inside buildings and then shipped to a site and then pre-positioned. Whether it was concrete, whether it was stick built, then later concrete, then later pre-formed, maybe a mobile home, whatever it is. Our evolution has consistently thought about the future. And Lynn, you're absolutely right. As a son of Buffalo, New York, I am fully aware of the snow. And you're right. And for the people that Alex is talking about, when we start talking about global warming and climate change and sea coastal homes that need to be made out of concrete so that they are durable, weather resistant, continue to house people, and don't have the kind of ecological damage that when a storm comes in, wipes out whole communities, only to be rebuilt again. All of that stuff is true, but it underscores how our evolution of thinking is possible. So, Lynn, I'll pick up a hammer and a nail any day to build, an outhouse. But the future is around the way. But don't mind me, Lynn.
I think you're very right. I don't mean to be archaic. And by the way, I thought you may have moved from Buffalo because I don't see the helmet behind you anymore. which was always there and very apparent. But anyway, so here it comes.
All right, man. No, I'm fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
But take a look at. I don't know whether Sharif, you've had Holmes Stoner on the show, but he does a lot of prefab housing, and he does it out of steel. And the interesting thing is, one of the problems that you have is at least in the United States, is you have to get it past the local people in the local building code offices. And the biggest problem they have is that they are very archaic in their thinking. So if it doesn't fit what they're used to doing and what they're used to seeing, then they're very loath to approve it. So he's had and he can produce his stuff not only structurally sound, but he can also produce it very quickly, which is another issue with respect to the way we currently build here in the United States. So, but I'm not sure how 3D printing fits into that kind of format, because I don't know enough about 3D printing to be able to say maybe one day we'll be able to do a form of 3D printing that prints it out of a steel plate. Maybe that will happen.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Rob, and different angle analysis coming, especially pros and cons about this 3D printing. How do you want to define about these weather issues, even Asia Pacific?
We probably should start with some stats. Back in 1980 was when the first 3D printer was used to showcase that houses could be printed. We didn't do too much until about 2006, when the University of Southern California unveiled the contour crafting system, where they used concrete to do a 3D building for the first time. And California is kind of important because of very high requirement for earthquake preparedness. You have to be at least able to survive a level 7 earthquake, and it did pass that. And then we did in 2015. We had the first 3D printed apartment block done in China. China is all in on 3D printing. It's pretty amazing. And then in China again in 2016, they did the first full size mansion, built it in 45 days. And then 2017. We showcased now with industrial grade equipment, we could build a 3D house in 24 hours. Now for some specific stats, and it's amazing, UK has some of the best stats out there in 3D printing. Their stats are, it takes about 8 weeks to build a normal home, about 2 to 3 days in the 3D printed homes they were looking at. The cost of the home to build, not to sell, and does not include the land, for a regular home was £146,000. The cost for the 3D printed home equivalent was £20,000. The number of people it took to build the home takes about 40 people to build a home. At least they estimate 40 people to build a home in the UK. 3D printed home takes 2 people, because you only use what you pour into the home. 3D printed home uses 59% less waste, generates 59% less waste, and in the UK. The building industry generates 20 million tons of waste every year. So that's a savings of 12 million tons of waste that generally ends up in landfills. And then talking about strength, the homes that were built in China were designed to withstand an 8.0 Richter scale earthquake. So I said level 7, it should have been 7 Richter. With the Richter scale, each number is 10 times, it's logarithmic, 10 times the strength of the prior scale. So if you figure that most of us haven't even been through a 7 Richter scale earthquake, an 8 will pretty much level everything in California. I don't think anything's been designed to take an 8 Richter scale, short of maybe a military building or maybe some of the government buildings. Certainly the retrofits aren't going to take an 8 Richter scale. And I too came out of the building industry. And finally, safety. Because you don't use that many people, and it's all done with equipment. You don't have people at risk. You don't have people on scaffolding. You don't have people working on the roofs. It's some of the worst injuries we had when I was in construction were people working on the roofs with some of the roofing material, which is kept molten when it goes in. And if you spill it, I mean, one poor guy, I think he had burns over 75% of his body, badly scarred. I was surprised he lived. Because of that tar that they coat the roofs with, not only isn't very eco-friendly, it's nasty stuff if you get it on you because it sticks and it's really hot. It'll just take the skin right off. So it's far safer as well. So cheaper, faster, more robust, safer. The difficulty we've got clearly as was pointed out by Lynn is the building commissions. You've got to get this through the planning and building commission. Right. Here in Bend, though, they've been pretty good about pretty much anything. They've recently kind of opened up to new ideas and new things. And I sent in a link to Blue Homes, which was the prefabricated home builder that I've been following since their start. Now that's not 3D printed homes. They build houses like you build aircraft. That's almost identical building capability. And what shows up at your building site is a tractor trailer rig. You pour the pad and pre-pour the stub out the electrical and the plumbing, and then they come in and kind of build this thing like it's a model, and it goes up 3-4 days, and they're done and out, and you've got a fully livable house. It even comes with the appliances when it shows up. So when they actually put the thing together, it is move-in ready. The designs are kind of blocky because of the nature of the build process. But these suckers they're built to last, and they'll flex in an earthquake. I don't remember what the Richter scale measurement was on it. I knew that they complied with California rules, but because they would flex, they would go up. But I do remember in the early years, the big problem was getting them through planning, because planning treated them like you would treat a mobile home, and that wasn't what this was. And then clearly quite a bit more expensive than a mobile home too, much more robust. But it took a while for the planning commissions and the building commissions to get around the differences and really understand that these things were far better, far safer, and at least in my case, not a lot cheaper. But they did come around to the idea. And as I said, the building group here is clearly been very open to new ideas and new things. But I can't point to a 3D printed house here in Bend yet. I'm afraid that most of the activity for this is now happening in areas for disaster relief, because you can put these things up really fast. And so if you've got a flood or an earthquake or one of those problems, the resources are being focused there, because you can build small houses. They'll accept small houses. They tend to waive a lot of the regulatory requirements because they need to get these things up fast. And clearly the demand is there, and the willingness to try new things, because you've got people that are homeless and live in hotels that need to get back into houses.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, sir. Mr. Alex, you are a climate activist. So I just want to know, you are facing different kind of challenge in different developing nations. My question is that, what do you think? What actually Mr. Lynn Schiffert come up with this idea that environment is a big challenge. So how actually 3D printed house can be effective for us? Even same things, even in developing nations, they have flood, they have rain, they have a lot of disasters. So how it gonna help for developing their housing industry?
So I think all of the pros outweigh the cons by far. As Rob seems very knowledgeable of this topic, he's covered a lot of the key categories and a lot of the important benefits. They are not just more efficient. I mean, if you think about every aspect that you look at it just seems like it's more efficient. I mean, building time. If you build something faster, it's going to be more efficient. If you cut down from 40 employees down to 2 employees, that's going to be more efficient. If you can use concrete, especially if you're grinding up old concrete, maybe grinding up glass or incorporating tires or something for the insulation. I mean, it's just more efficient. Hempcrete, I hope that we lean towards that as a building material. I think that the benefits And the reduced environmental impact of these types of projects and 3D printed homes is going to be incredible in the future as we continue to explore these. We were just talking about codes and permitting, and I think this is also going to expedite new building projects because they're all going to be, I mean, like, let's say that you get one design approved or permitted. Well, that one design is going to be exactly the same, just as it would be a blueprint on any other, suburban house. So I think that's just going to help expedite building more of these in new places around the world. I have seen a problem around the world with building wood houses in the forest and people not practicing defensible space. This is causing a positive feedback loop with homes. So every time you have a home catch fire in the forest, all that carbon's released up into the atmosphere. That supplements global warming, greenhouse gases, increases in atmospheric temperatures, and then it causes more forest fires, more global heat waves, droughts, pine beetles spreading, more homes burning and releasing more carbon. So it's a bad positive feedback loop. I don't think we should be building wood houses in the forest or forest susceptible towards to forest fires. And I think this is another really good solution because not only are they cost efficient, energy efficient, and all these other advantages, I think these have the ability to be fireproof. So this is a new topic for me. Although I do have over a decade of construction experience working with my stepdad that is a general contractor and runs a very successful construction business. I have taken the course not only renewable energy and resources, I have taken a college course called Green Building Construction and Design, where we learned a lot about green technologies, construction materials, upcycling, LEED certifications, and all of that. So when it again, all of the advantages I think are just incredible, and this is the direction that we need to go. Unfortunately, it is going to replace jobs, as Rob mentioned, going from 40 potential people building a home down to 2. That is a huge percentage reduction with manpower and labor, and then that would impact the economy and just jobs in general. And a lot of these conversations we talk about goes back to the need to implement universal basic income, UBI, and how the rich will continue to get richer and the poor will get poorer, and capitalism will continue to increase the divide between the rich and the poor. I think these homes will help house a lot of homeless people. It has that potential, and again, affordable housing, but I do think that it will take away jobs. So we need to work towards that. I absolutely loved a point that Rob made about, this is just so incredible, the waste. The construction industry just wastes so much supplies. You got to think, like, every single 2x4 in a house, there's going to be waste. Every single piece of plywood, you're going to have little scraps. Every electrical wire you put in, every piece of plumbing, every piece of sheetrock has waste. So when you build a home, you have huge piles of waste. And of course, we try our best to upcycle some of this material, to recycle it, to turn, plywood or scrap wood back into particle board and melt down, some of the stuff. But when we're not even using as much copper plumbing in houses, and we're using these plastic tubing and pipes that are not recyclable, like PVC, and some of those types of pipes are just not recyclable. So again, that was just an incredible benefit that I didn't realize. And if you think about every single home, how much waste comes from each home, and then the waste that would be saved with these projects, I think that's just like a no-brainer, hands down. Like, this is what we need to do. This is one of the solutions towards the environmental crisis that we're in. When Rob also mentioned toxins. That's another huge concern, whether it's going in and painting the interior or up on the roof, doing the roofing material. I think that's just going to take out the human aspect and all of those potential risks. But we're still going to have a really good, high quality final product that's strong, durable, environmentally friendly, low cost, and more efficient. So I would like to politely and kindly or honestly disagree with Lynn about the snow. If you spend 10 minutes in Google Images looking at these different images, you can see that these aren't, they're not, the roofs are same or similar to regular home design. It's not like the walls are going to collapse. They're concrete, so they're stronger than regular walls. But it's not just those types of designs that are using wood roofs. It's the designs that are more designed like an igloo. And anytime you have a sphere or something with a dome shape, that weight is dispersed. It's not going to collapse like an igloo. Igloos don't collapse because of snow, because of the convex shape, and that's how they're designing a lot of these structures. They're making them with a dome shape, so if there's snow on it, that snow is going to be dispersed, and the weight's going to be dispersed. For the ones that are not the dome shape, they do have. If you look at some of the designs, I mean, of course, there's different models and different designs, but I would think okay, it's always great to be skeptical of everything and question things, but again, I think there's just so many different models and different designs for different regions, for different threats, whether it's hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquakes. Snow is also one of those that we have to be concerned, and I think as we continue to explore these, we'll continue to work towards the best options in different regions. But again, just going through some of those designs, I think that there's other aspects that we could be skeptical about, but I don't think snow collapsing the roof would be one of those. So if you see that image at the bottom, the lower right hand corner, there's a lot of structures like that, and there's no on something that's oval or the types of shapes that they are building. So that's all.
Thank you, Mr. Rob. Like you come up with the different information from NASA, even from BBC, even this like reports. So how do you want to analyze the whole things? Especially, yes, in developing nations they have a lot of disasters, but I'm sure that opportunity is huge because in housing industry is growing very fast.
Well, yeah, that's it. And the handy thing about 3D printed houses is they use localized material. I mean, that's why NASA proved it for the Mars mission, is because we're not shipping lumber to Mars to build houses. I mean, they're going to have to use local material to build them out. And they're already approved a series of designs for the I'm thinking, yeah, everybody realized that. Let's go to Mars, except it's a one-way trip, so you're not coming back. So you better like it there. But in any case, the fact of the matter is that one of the handy things about 3D printed homes is you're using local material, typically a mixture of concrete and hemp or hay, or you're using a blend of a natural material and concrete, and that increases the R value of the build. Plus, in some ways, it makes the build much more resilient to weather. So the end result is you can build it locally, you can build it fast. Alex mentioned that once again that it does cost less people, but when you're trying to build things quickly and you've got a labor shortage, this labor problem comes up a lot with regard to artificial intelligence as well. And to give you an example, the trucking industry is trying to stop autonomous trucks because they're afraid they're going to put their drivers out of work. But right now we're currently short around 200,000 drivers. We don't have the people to drive the trucks, and so it could be a long while before you affect the drivers. And the reason that we're so short is because the drivers hate the work, and they can't, and they just don't like it. No matter you pay them $80,000 a year, doesn't matter. They still hate it. And by going to autonomous driving, the driver can sit and read and do other kinds of work. They don't have to be with it. They still have to have people in the trucks though, because otherwise the people pull the trucks over and rob them. So the labor has to shift. So in the case of the truck driver, instead of being a truck driver, you become a purser, and you manage the accounting of the truck or the truck caravan. In the case of the building the houses, instead of being a general carpenter, which is a really low-paying job, maybe you're operating the 3D printer, or maybe you're building 3D printers. So it's just a different kind of a job, often higher paying than the job that you had. It does require a skill set, but these machines tend to be relatively automated as they come in, and so the training level isn't like it is when you take a say an entry level carpenter and try to take them up to a finished carpenter, that can take you a while to train somebody to do finish work. It takes learned skills. I haven't seen a lot of finished carpenters that are good that haven't been doing it for a number of years. But the training here is much less. Because the computer will handle most everything else. Yet it's still considered, if you're operating a computer, more of a white collar than a blue collar job. So full benefits. So you need less people, but those people can be higher paid. Now it does depend on how the industry evolves, and we're still at the very beginning. Right now, if you're doing 3D printing houses, you probably write your own check, but because you've got much more demand than we have supply, and the equipment isn't being built fast enough. But it's a huge opportunity, and particularly because you can do it locally. You don't have to import a bunch of stuff. Importing lumber, importing steel, importing building materials can be very costly. I looked at building a home in Belize, and much of the cost of building that house wasn't labor, because labor was cheap. It was importing the materials you needed to build the homes. And so if you can build using local materials, you can reduce the cost rather dramatically. And in countries like Belize, where U.S. citizens can go down there and can pay the freight, but what about a native? I mean, no natives can be buying a $1.5 million home in Belize. One of the problems that I saw in Costa Rica was the same thing. The natives couldn't afford the houses. Many of the houses they were building, most of them were being built for expats out of Europe or the United States, which creates a pretty ugly socioeconomic problem where you've got a bunch of people with the money, relatively small group, and a relatively big group that doesn't have the money. So often the people that have the money find themselves on the wrong end of weapons. So you want that balance. You want the people, the native population, to be able to afford decent houses. You want to lower the homelessness, and that lowers the overall pressure on the geopolitical system for revolution. And so right. This could have a huge impact on kind of lowering the overall temperature between the haves and the have-nots, which is getting pretty ugly in countries like ours, but across the world. So it could have a huge potential benefit to dealing with homelessness issues and the very high disparity between those that have and those that have not. And then I'm going to have to run because I've got a meeting in 1 minute.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Rob. Mr. Lin. Yes.
Just to comment on one thing that Rob said. In the building trades today, owners of the various businesses, the biggest hurdle they have is hiring people, because today most of the younger people want nothing to do with the building trades. So the difficulty is you can't find people who want to become plumbers. You can't find people who want to become electricians. You can't find people who want to become carpenters. So obviously, a pre-built home or something that is built the way we've been talking about, it solves a very significant problem, because there is not the availability of the workforce. And you can go pretty much anywhere in the country and ask the question, and that you're going to find pretty much the same answer. There just is not the availability of the workforce, because young people don't want it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Understand. Dr. William.
Yeah, well, always a pleasure. Two things that I just want to mention, and that is that for policymakers out there, you obviously, and we always have to think about jobs and the future portion of employment and those prospects. However, sometimes with innovation, which fundamentally the 3D printing of a home or structures is, it's not the elimination of jobs, it's the off-shifting of jobs, the redirecting of jobs. So as was made clear, it's not that it may take fewer people to actually be on site to construct a home. That does not mean necessarily in the overall context that you're going to have less people needed in the process. You're still going to have the same number of people. They're just going to have to be differently trained, differently engineered. And Lynn, you were absolutely right. There is a dearth of new talent in the building and construction trade areas. And for whatever reason, The issue simply, though, it seems for policymakers is how do we, one, get other people to know that, hey, those jobs are still available. Two, there are different avenues for those jobs because they're just going to be differently enabled. And so with every evolution, there's a change in thinking. But sometimes it's just the right thinking, and we have to go about thinking about it the right way. Sharif?
Ali Rice. Can you hear me? Ali?
Yes,
Ali, can you hear me?
I can.
Yes, can
Yeah,
you share
yeah.
your views? Because many different points come, especially
Okay.
pros and cons about this 3D
Can.
printed house. Yes.
I definitely, when I came to Malaysia to work, and I was running an arts and conservation project, the neighbours at the 5-star hotel that I worked at was actually just about to build his house, and I visited the village that he was part of, and he lived in a like a traditional village, so the houses are on stilts, and there was no planning permission. The community got together and they built his house with him. This was, I think it was like 20 thing. And one of the things that's really interesting is that all of the things that I've watched about building, and I've seen the slums in India and slums in Africa, and I think the thing is that one of the things that everybody needs to realize is there has to be a hub of the community and a vested interest and has a shared interest. So it's not just about individual housing, but building communities that actually create things that they want to live in. So I think that's my thoughts, and things are going to evolve, and that for me, I'm an activist too and an environmentalist, and I'm for using natural materials. But I think the thing is that things are going to move forward, and I think that the community that's going to live in the house needs to be stakeholders, and so I think organizations need to bring stakeholders in that are going to benefit, so they help lead the process. And I think in all the projects we've done, that creative process has always had the stakeholders involved in the solution. So I think the thing is that all of the stakeholders need to be involved in solutions as well as so that we can move forward too. So and I do think that the bespoke element of design is where it's interesting. So that the 3D house, if there's bespoke models that can be kind of put together for certain areas and regions or climates, then that's the way forward. But yeah, so for me it is about kind of bringing stakeholders together and making sure that communities are built that people want to live in, and they're aesthetic, and it's not seen as poor housing, but kind of new and innovative, so it's leading the way as opposed to so that's it. It's the innovation needs to be something that people are proud of, not something that's like a subcategory of something.
Thank you. One of the important aspects, Ali, yes, Ali, add innovation. Yes, definitely.
Yes, you did
Ali
wonderful.
come up
Thank
with
you.
the idea. Yes, come up with the point of innovation. So what do you think, Alex, Dr. Williams, even Mr. Lin? How do you want to add innovation in business? How it works? Yes, I want to start from Mr. Lin.
Lin? Okay.
Well, innovation in business oftentimes just simply happens because somebody wants to solve a problem that nobody else has been able to solve. And the other thing is thinking out of the box, because so many people who, I mean, after all, you might comment on the fact that my experience in the construction industry goes back to basically from around 1970 to the year 2000. So my experience was always different, and I didn't think out of the box. And I've learned a lot just by listening here. But innovation always happens when people solve problems, and sometimes people will think of a problem that needs to be solved that nobody else has thought of, and that's to me how innovation happens. So Bill's shaking his head. I think he's probably getting ready to disagree with me.
Yes, Dr. William.
No, I mean, is it my turn, Dr. Sharif? May I?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
yes.
Well, then, just so you know, and I know you know, but maybe not for our audience. I am in my prior life as a labor attorney, uh, clearly on the union side of the building and trades. So labor is local. You know, they build the streets, the roads, pour the concrete. So don't mind me, Lynn, because you might think you're archaic, but you're not to me. For me, you're a wise gentleman that I always love to listen to. Now, that having been said, you are absolutely right. That when it comes to innovation, it's always, do you have a better idea? Can you build a better mousetrap? Do you have a different way of thinking about things? And if you can do that, or you have that idea, and you can bring it to market faster, cheaper, and in a more efficient way, people will listen. And business never changes. Those are always the basic principles. Lynn, I defer to you on this one, but those are always the basic principles. If you can do it in a way that provides a benefit, meets a need, thinks about it better, and have people that are willing to think outside the box that business people and entrepreneurs have to do, then the rest of the world will eventually listen, even to old people like me. Sharif?
Thank you, Mr. Alex. Yes, Mr. Lin. I think you want to add something, Mr. Alex.
Oh, for me? Okay, I
Yes.
apologize. Um, so yeah, there's some things that I wanted to add regarding lead certification. So again, I have taken a course and I learned a little bit about lead certification, and those I think are now international. So there's different ways of building a new home or business, or retrofitting an old home or old business to get it LEED certified. LEED is like the environmental standard of a wide range of things in a home or in a business that makes it environmental. So it would go from like, are they using recycled material, or as often as possible to build. Now it's been about 5 to 7 years since I've taken this course. So correct me if I'm wrong if I say any of this. Okay, so like are there Energy Star appliances? Are there low flow water? You know, is it energy efficient with the light? Is the paint that's being used, is it not off gassing? Is it low toxins? And is the wood from a sustainable source, such as FSC certification, which stands for Forest Stewardship Council, where they're making sure trees are planted at a sustainable rate. So LEED certifications in homes and businesses are rated, whether it's like a silver or a gold or a platinum rating. Now that increases the value of that home or that business. So when if someone buys a home, an old home, they could actually have, general contractors and construction people come in and redo the home and make it maybe like a silver or a gold LEED certification. So when they sell that home, they'll get much more money for it, especially, for someone that's an environmentalist that wants an environmentally friendly home with a lower environmental impact, or new home buildings, or companies and corporations that are buying new buildings. They're now realizing they're getting publicly criticized for their environmental impact. So if they move into a new location, a new building, or build a new building, if it's LEED certified, then they're going to get some good PR, and that's going to help their business. And it'll also just make them feel better about their environmental impact of their product or whatever they're doing. So I think we're going to continue to see more LEED certified 3D printed homes, and that's going to be incorporated into some of those. I did mention hempcrete. We mentioned plastic and concrete as building materials. Maybe in the future they will be able to melt down different types of metals. There's a lot of different building materials that could possibly work. Of course, plastic would be bad because of the off-gassing, but I do want to mention a key word. It is permeable concrete. Now, permeable concrete is designed with little rocks and concrete, but there's like a lot of air pockets. So those air pockets allow us to lay down sidewalks but using less concrete and less material. And concrete has a huge environmental impact in correlation to global warming, with not just mining it and shipping it and everything. So concrete's bad for the environment. So if we're incorporating maybe a type of permeable concrete when it comes to 3D printed homes, even though it's not waterproof, maybe for the filler, that would also lower the overall environmental impact of the concrete and being used. So permeable concrete's used in sidewalks. So when it rains, it's so porous that the rain actually goes through. And I think we need to incorporate more permeable concrete around the world every time we lay new sidewalks and certain types of roads. So when it rains, we don't see the flooding that we saw in Houston and after a major hurricane, Houston or other areas around the world. So I just want to put that in. So as far as using local materials, I am usually all for using local materials because of the lower environmental impact. But again, you can't build wood houses in the forest because they'll just catch fire and burn. So that's a bad example of using local materials. A good example of using local materials is what Philip Merkin is doing. He's been on the show once before. He runs a major nonprofit in Fiji, and right now he's currently in Mexico, but the government's given him land and money and resources and human power and everything. So he's really well connected in Fiji. He's building, so he studied a lot with like building structures. He wrote a book, and then he started building these homes for villagers in Fiji, and he was using local materials. And it was just mentioned, he is using a type of mud and a hay mix, and he's building these structures in a dome type shape. And he is doing that not just for strength of the roof, but for all the hurricanes that have been hitting Fiji. And the last show that he was on, he was really proud to say that some of his structures survived. I think it was like 4 or 5 hurricanes. It was incredible. So that's a good example of using local materials, and that's similar to what we will be or could possibly be doing if and when we relocate to Mars by building building with local materials. So I want to say Rob earlier mentioned the R value, and I just want to say R value, for those of you that don't know, has to do with the not just the thickness of a wall, but how its insulation capability, how it is able to keep out the hot air or the cold air from one side of the structure to the other. So different thicknesses of insulation have a different R value. It goes from from R13 to R30, and there's different. And again, Lynn can correct me because it's been a while since I've done construction. Now, NASA has built paint, and it's I actually use this with my projects. It's a whole bunch of microscopic porcelain beads, and it looks like flour. It looks just like white powder. So you mix that in with paint. It's a paint additive, and when you paint it on the outside of a structure, not only does it help with the radiant heat and the sun rays and all that, UV rays, it has like an R value. It's just so interesting that we have that technology. So I paint my micro tiny homes with this NASA paint, and I hope they continue to incorporate that because it is the hollow microscopic porcelain beads help increase the R value of the paint. Now, when I'm talking about permeable concrete and some of those, I was thinking of this term and like how things are stronger and you use less materials and it makes it lighter weight and more durable. So if you think of the bones in our body, how they're porous, if you think about coral or the permeable concrete, it increases the strength and you use less materials. And that's how they're starting to build the walls of these 3D printed homes, where there's huge air pockets that are like making it porous, so they're using less materials similar to bones or coral. So it's really cool. We haven't had that technology when we're using basic framing techniques, when we're using lumber and wood and all of that. So I do want to expand on bricks is another type of 3D printed homes, or to the best of my knowledge. So that's where we could have the machines, instead of printing the home, it's actually picking the bricks up and dropping them off in a specific location that's predetermined, and the code is entered in a computer or software. So that's another way that we could expedite home construction design, probably make them stronger, better, faster, and cheaper by using bricks. So I like that. I do like that. Is it Lynn Rice? Liz Rice? Sorry, your name's not up on the screen any longer.
Ali Rice.
Allie Rice. Okay, Lynn, Allie Rice. She mentioned grand design. I did some research on that, so that was very informative. And yeah, again, innovation. So it does happen when people are trying to build. So it's not just about solving problems, which is important, but a lot of times innovation, I mean, yeah, it comes from them trying to solve the problem, but also money, just saving money or making more money. And I think the innovation that's happening because of 3D printing, not only is it going to solve a huge problem, it's also has the ability to make money or save money. And I think there's a lot of applications for 3D printed homes in the future.
Yes, yes. I think Dr. William, you want to add some point when Mr. Alex want to add something. Can you hear me?
No, can you hear me? I can hear you.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Well, a couple of things. I was merely nodding my head on what Alex talked about with regard to permeable concrete. It is, well, first of all, concrete is a hard surface and leads to runoff. And so there is a great deal of environmental, secondary adverse impacts. Now, that having been said, it is true, though, that when we start to look at all these things and as we move forward, Lynn, you and I know that you've been around for quite some time. I don't know about building on Mars. I don't even know if they have concrete there. But I do know that locally sourced, different ways that we think about things, knowing that we have to optimistically look forward and embrace the future. And even at times understand that maybe, we need to think about things differently. And so all of the items that Alex raised, because he has my heart and soul with him, because he is forward thinking. But it's not being a skeptic, Lynn. It just is that you and I, we may be thinking about things differently, and rather than rushing that quickly to the future, we just want to double check things. No different than, when you double check your bank account or your ledger. Lynn?
Are you calling me old, Bill?
No, I'm calling you my friend.
No, I have always had the attitude that we have to think out of the box. Sometimes I haven't thought as much out of the box as I should, but we do have to think outside of the box, and we have to be open to a change. And the biggest change might be when my grandsons decide they want to send me to Mars and let me stay there. So I have to laugh about that one, but that's okay. So I am going to unfortunately have to adjourn because I've got another meeting to go to. But I've enjoyed this, and I love to participate, Sharif. I just wish that I had more time in the mornings to be able to do it. And Bill, it's been such a pleasure seeing you. I really, it has been a while.
Well, Happy New Year. Happy New Year. Happy 2021. Yeah.
Well, or maybe it was Happy New Year 2020, because I'm not sure we even have seen each other that long. I'm kidding. So, and Allie Rice, it's very nice meeting you. Sharif, have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
And we'll see you all soon.
Thank you.
Oh, lovely.
Thank you. Yes, Dr. William, like one of the specific objective for World Talent Economy Forum, we want to move with the policy level discussions. So like, what do you think? Like policy wise, how we can develop good policy for housing industry, especially affordable housing. And I also want to know some views from Ali, but I want to start with Dr. William.
Okay, well, first of all, from a policy perspective, when we start thinking about these changes, oftentimes when we talk about new technologies and we talk about the transitions into these other areas that seemingly are exotic at the time. They may not be exotic in 5 years or even 24 months. However, certain things are still true. Labor, supply chain, everything goes into building an affordable home with a 3D or however it is we build it are still going to require the same things. They're going to require people that are trained in the new areas. They're going to require a supply stream for the materials that are used, however those materials are constructed. So for policymakers, when we start thinking about where we need to be and what ought to be to meet the moment, we still have some fundamentals. And those fundamentals are not going to change. People, power, delivery, education. And that's what we ought to be thinking about. It could be true that the subject matter changes. It could be true whether it's permeable concrete for sidewalks or 3D printing or the machines that build a house rather than with wood and nails. All of that may change, but the basic process is still going to be the same. So for policymakers, all of this stuff should be exciting because it gives you a brand new way of rethinking the same challenge, assuming the same requirements: people, power, basic human needs. Three.
Thank you, Ali Rice. Ali, can you hear me?
Yeah. Okay. So yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yes, yes.
Cool. Okay. So I agree actually, but I think one of the things that's happened actually is that we've allowed processes to be unsustainable and people to make profits without thinking about people and planet. And I think now we need to turn things around. So there has to be a win-win. So I was part of an environmental entrepreneurs project. So it was just before I had Coty. So it's 16 years ago. And then they were talking about ways of kind of reusing even nappies. You know, they managed to make aggregate for roads from nappies because nappies are so unbiodegradable. So I think even fundamentals and all the chemicals that are in products need to be questioned. And I just think that the power needs to be shifted so that there's a sustainable way of living, because it's not about the money and the economy, it's about the ecology of the planet. And that's really what needs to shift as far as I'm concerned, because until that does, our well-being depends on the health of our planet fundamentally. And people need to live and eat. You know, fundamentals aren't being met. One of my best friends when I used to work in the States was from Africa, and that was 20 years ago. And she was shocked that there were animal rights in America because in Africa, there was still no human rights. So I think there's a humanitarian crisis across the world that needs to be looked at. You know, it's kind of, so the fundamentals are even kind of more, you know, I think there needs to be a sustainability and a question on why the profits are being made from people that, you know, so even at the moment, the people that are creating vaccines, you know, Pfizer over here in the UK made something like £9 million on the back of, you know, a crisis that's locked everyone else down, so that people aren't, you know, that people that have got livelihoods and businesses are struggling, and people that are creating vaccinations are making huge profits. You know, that's questionable. So, you know, so yeah. I've kind of thrown it wide, but I think there's a question on sustainability and profiteering. There you go.
Yes. Yes. Thank you, Dr. William. What do you want to add in terms of sustainability at this point? And definitely, I will go after this round for the concluding remarks. Okay, Dr. William, for sustainability.
Well, actually, I want to endorse everything Ali just said. It's going to require, and I think we're already doing it now, this kind of comprehensive rethinking from beginning to end, the entire process. Ali, you are absolutely right. And it does require a change in how we think. But here's the optimistic message, if I may, and that is this: that part of our job and part of our team responsibility on as global citizens right now is to share what ought to be done with those that will be occupying our jobs in 5 or 10 years. I mean, because at some point in time, somebody else is going to be on Dr. Sharif's show. And it won't be me, you know. I know it will be you because you are intelligent, Ali. And I know Dr. Sharif not going anywhere, but it will be somebody else. And hopefully they will be informed by at least the thoughts and questions that you were raising. So I may sit here and I may talk about the process and supply chain and people and power and building. All that stuff may be true. However, it's everybody that's listening to us now, the policymakers, the students, the over 10 million people that watch this show that are going to be thinking about the different ways that we all ought to be thinking in terms of the process, which is why you are right, Ali.
Yes, Ali.
Thanks.
So you come up with a very good idea of sustainability.
Yes.
So yes. So what do you want to add more?
Yeah, and I also think I was just going to say as well, because my children are 13 and 16, and the future that I want for my children, I want to be a brighter, better future than we have now. And I think that's, you know, the way that kind of questioning where the power is and kind of the, you know, just, so I really do think that this generation does see themselves as global citizens, and there's less just. And it's almost like the media and the storm that they create are fueling the division for another reason, and that our children, you know, this isolation, we're in our third isolation in the UK, and this one's the hardest, and the children have been isolated on and off since this time last year. And you know, the mental health of people that are in, you know, just in the West, and they do have roofs over their heads. It's just, so I just think that we need to, you know, there needs to be a humanitarian, you know, as a humanitarian way of looking at everything. You know, it's kind of, and it's nature, you know, the reconnection to nature and each other is the thing that we need to do, not divide. You know, there's too much division, and what's really good about your, you know, these conversations and the way that you bring people together, Sharif, is that it's the first time, because of the global crisis, that everyone's to come together and are suffering, you know, the same thing. You know, their circumstances are different, but the limitations and the restrictions, you know, are affecting everybody. And it's made people question everything. And people needed to, because we weren't living sustainably. Capitalism and materialistic ways of living isn't a way to, you know, you can't keep taking more resources from the earth. You know, it's kind of, you know, so yeah. So and obviously for me, the future of my children is more important to me than anything. So, you know, that's and their voice needs to be heard too. They've got good ideas and they see possibility. You know, Alex is really young, and he's already kind of demonstrating how possibilities can, you know, can be worked through. I think you just need to. People need to be allowed to see where the future lies, and we're all co-creating, you know, the future, even if we don't realize it. So, you know, the apathy of people that think that they can't make a difference is the frustrating thing, because everybody can.
Thank you, Mr. Home.
I don't know whether I even answered your question.
Yes, Mr. Homestoner. So you are a very successful businessman. Also, you have a housing-related business. Today, we discuss about 3D printed house. Even in the session, Lynn Shepard actually discussed about you, that how you grow your business in housing industry. So what do you want to share about your housing business with our Asia Pacific audience?
Well, the future of the housing business is going to be sustainable, and it's going to be modular. It's the only way that people can house themselves in the future because the prices are not going to ever go down. So as the existing real estate infrastructure becomes less and less affordable, other alternatives have to take place, which will mean the people have to live smarter and smaller. So you're going to be watching a transcendent of housing go from larger to smaller, more portable, safer, and smarter.
Sir, one specific I have in mind as the Asia Pacific as well as North America. So what will be the future of 3D printed house? What do you think? Or you have different technology? What I heard about this steel based housing, and what do you want to share about your project?
Well, firstly, one of the main reasons that we have global warming the way it is about a third of that particulate that's causing all this comes from deforestation. Deforestation is one of the rampant things that are really killing our environment. People normally will either cut the wood for farming or cut the wood for charcoal, or primarily cut the wood for construction. Any way you look at it, they're cutting the wood, especially down in your part of the world, in Southeast Asia, at alarming rate. So you're basically cutting the lungs out of the earth. The earth cannot breathe, okay? And so there's no exchange of carbon dioxide and oxygen back and forth through the atmosphere. With steel is made from iron ore. Iron ore is the most common element on the planet Earth. We're standing on 20 miles deep of iron ore. The core of the Earth is iron ore. It can be recycled again and again and again, and it's 100 times stronger than wood. It doesn't burn, doesn't attract insects, it doesn't get mildew, it doesn't fall down in an earthquake, it doesn't blow over. I mean, for the price of wood being almost 30 to 40% higher than steel structures, it just does not make any sense. But human beings never make any sense. They do things that are so illogical that they just don't pencil out. So we basically are just trying to slowly inoculate the world on flipping over from wood to steel. And it's happening, and it's getting a lot of traction recently. In the last 2-3 months, I think we've increased our production from 500 units a month to 20,000 units. So you can see that it's taken off.
Well, Holmes, I think that's excellent news. I'm so
What
proud
do
of
you think? Like,
I know it doesn't matter, but phenomenal growth. But you know what do I know? Sorry, Sharif.
yes, yes. Like beside that, I just want to know, like example, like as you are developing your business in Asia Pacific as well, and China has huge impact, especially this Belt and Road Initiative and many housing related activities they are doing right now. What do you think? Like what do you think about this Chinese technology, especially in the housing industry? Or how do you want to compare the North American housing industry as well as
Let me
this?
ask you. I'll ask you a few questions here. Do you have a Home
Mhm,
Depot in
mhm.
your country? Do you have a Home Depot in your
Yes,
country? Do you have a BQ in
mhm,
your company? Do you have a Lowe's in your country?
definitely.
Okay.
Mhm, mhm,
80% of the goods that are in there are made in China. 80%.
mhm, mhm,
Okay. Even though they have American labels and whatever, built right, Makita, all that, all made in China. Everything made in China. Okay. So there's no way
mhm,
around
mhm,
the fact that you're going to be able to build
mhm.
anything without dealing with China. It's just a fact. Okay.
Oh, okay.
America has
Mhm,
moved into what we call a service economy. We're high tech and service.
Mhm.
So we have offshored and outsourced all of our manufacturing for 40 years. It's going to take us 40 years to bring it back if they want to bring it back at a very, very big cost. It's not coming back. Okay. China's there. China's doing it. China's manufacturing, and China's always going to be there. Some people will move to other places, other locations like Vietnam or Laos or down in the Philippines, but it's still going to be overseen, and the equipment and the funding is all going to come from China. So if you don't deal with China, you're probably not going to deal with things that you're going to need. Now, the other things like communication, Wi-Fi, security, cameras, things like that can come from anywhere. But I'm talking about the nuts and bolts things, the hardware, the nails, the screws, the things that people don't make in other places. Okay, you can't put a house together without bolts. Okay, you can't put you can't put a foundation down without bolts, without steel. Okay, 60% of that steel going into construction today comes from China.
Right, right.
Yes. Dr. William, want to add some point, the diplomatic relationship in between China and North America?
Well, first, I just want to pick up on where Holmes just left off, and that is simply this. There is a common idea that I think more people need to understand, and that is you cannot outsource construction. If I have to have a sidewalk built, a home built, a building built, a street paved, a street sign made, I've got to do it here, where I live. And that is true for the rest of the world. So it's true in Malaysia, it's true in India, it's true in America, it's true in Canada, it's true in the UK. With that in mind, that when Holmes says you can't outsource certain things, and that is true. And at that point, for policymakers, you have to understand that, hey, that's where the future employment is. And so what we have to do is we have this kind of dual challenge that Ali talked about. One, we have to think about the future as global citizens, but at the same time, as policymakers, we have to think about that global future within the confines of what our practical options are today, knowing that certain things have to be met. Jobs, local production, self-advancement in each country. Now, that leads me simply to this, Sharif, to answer your question. When it comes to international diplomacy, I want to begin by simply saying I am not the Secretary of State, and so I do not presume to have those kinds of qualifications. What I can say is simply this. I think that right now we're on the cusp here in the world, if not already, for an age of enlightened diplomacy, because it's no longer one country, one rule. It's not that, China is in charge. It's not that the United States is in charge. It's not that Canada is in charge. It's not that the UK is in charge. It's rather all of the countries collectively working together as everyone tries to figure out their way that we can all kind of get to where we need to get globally. Each country taking care of our own, but also collectively taking care of each other. And if there's one thing, and Ali raised this earlier, that one lesson that we've learned from COVID during this past year is simply that we now know that we have to rely on everybody else to collectively put things back together. And whether that's the economy, whether that's how we go about thinking about things, whether that's a collaboration to produce vaccines, whether that's supply chain management to get what the vaccines and or the materials distributed wherever they are, whether or not it even involves housing and iron ore, as Holmes raised. That we know to be true. So I would like, on the issue of diplomacy, I don't necessarily want to single out China, because I don't necessarily think that that is the way we ought to be thinking about things. We ought to be thinking about things in the way that the world presents us with right now, and that is we need a whole bunch of people, and there are a whole bunch of people out there, and there are a whole bunch of different countries, and not any one country can lead without remembering or understanding the other. And even if there are disagreements from time to time, at the end of the day, we all have to work together. Sharif?
Thank you, Mr. Homestoner. So, as you are working with the global trade and global relationship, so what your prediction about next 5 years, especially in the business industry? Even in COVID situation, many countries has a lot of challenges. What your business predictions?
Actually, in a strange way, by the fact that the COVID showed up when it did, it basically slowed down a red hot glowing engine, which was good because now there's been time for people to reconnoiter and pull back and analyze where you've been, what you're doing, how you're doing, and how your competitors are competing against you. So what's basically happened now is this post-COVID, as they call it, is going to be probably 2 to 3 years of dramatic growth. We're going to see a lot less friction between, as Bill was saying before, this new age of diplomacy has now reignited relationships between people that have, prior to this, been recalcitrant to being friends with us. Now we have a new relationship, let's say, that we're rebuilding from scratch. As we do that, we'll start seeing the pulse start to come back into the world's global economy. People will start negotiating and resolving their differences, and you'll start seeing a robust economy again for at least 2 to 3 years. So you can count on that. That's going to happen for sure.
Yeah, actually, Holmes, whether they like it or not, right? Because they want to do business.
Exactly, whether they like it or not.
This is what you've got, buddy, right?
Yeah, that's it. That's exactly it.
Yes. Ali Rice, what do you want to add for global trade as you live in Europe?
Okay, I think one of the things, I think one of the things that has been interesting about coronavirus is it's pushed us all to pivot online. So obviously the children are being online schooled. I had to pivot my business and services online. So I think that it's forced us all to pivot in a different direction and realize there's possibility. And I think that possible huge potential and promise for the future. But I do question though that COVID's going to be given is always going to be pointed at and said, you know, that's why this has happened. And essentially the health service in the UK and the education system were all kind of failing to a certain extent. So I think the systems need change, and Corona and what's happened has pushed everybody into a new way of doing things. So, but I do think the systems to a certain extent, and I've worked in education for over 30 years, was quite broken, and that needed to change too. So maybe it's pushed all those changes and made us everything that we need to deal with surface, so that, you know, it's our personal lives and in business, and, you know, it's kind of, so it's reconnected us with everything that, you know, that it was easy to forget. So yeah, but I'm really optimistic about the future. Yeah. And the possibility.
You. One specific point I just want to know about modern science and technology. Even, yes, China developing different universities, Malaysia has education hubs, Singapore doing very good job, South Korea's and other countries are developing their knowledge-based hub, and definitely Europe and USA has their most valuable research centers and organizations. But the final point, I want to know more about modern science and engineering. What will happen? What the predictions, and how we can tie up together for modern science and engineering, and especially vaccine is a big issue right now. How we can work together. I want to start from Mr. Homestoner, then Dr. William, and finally Ali Rice, and then we go for concluding remarks. Homestoner.
Well, I see the marriage there between the belief in science and in our scientific minds and the actual technology that's out there available to the people, it's going to merge, as I said before, as this diplomacy, as Bill was saying before, becomes more resilient, and our old friends become closer as they did before. We're going to be able to exchange ideas, exchange technologies freely, without any worry about bringing damage back to us, because there's going to be this new sense of relationship and this new sense of understanding and cooperation, where there'll be one vaccine for everybody, okay, that you only have to take one time. But as we're blundering through the darkness and we have 5, 10, 20 different coronaviruses or vaccines, and nobody can get it, you have to make an appointment for 2 months ahead, okay, that's going to slowly break down. And as that becomes more of a reality and these vaccines become more effective, we'll see one vaccine for everybody. That's my belief. And just as that is a phenomenon, you'll see other technologies doing the same thing. You'll see security technologies and automation technologies, computer science technologies, even in some cases security technologies, all in becoming a standard where everybody has a standard so that nobody can make a mistake that will cause irreparable harm.
Dr. William.
Oh, okay. Well, first, let me just say I agree with everything that Holmes just said, and it's going to be interesting. One of the things, and I just want to caution people: this is not necessarily nobody's describing or proscribing a golden age of agreement. That's not what diplomacy or relationships are about. They're about having the real, honest discussions about what it takes to reach an agreement that is mutually beneficial for both sides or multi-sides in a multilateral kind of agreement. But I am hopeful, at least on this point, and that is to say that what we now have is we have people that are actually coming to the table and say, let's be realistic about what the challenges are. I don't want to cover up or gloss over or necessarily sidestep or window wash an issue. It could be true that, I like red and Holmes likes blue. I don't know, he makes homes and I don't. Those are just differences. But what I do know is that we can exchange ideas, and that I think is really going to be the model. So that earlier when I suggested an age of enlightened engagement, enlightened diplomacy, it as its underpinning has this kind of realistic notion. But Holmes is absolutely right that COVID had the unexpected benefit of slowing down the economy and causing everybody else to take a pause, a deep breath, and then to rethink what and how we are going to go about things. And invariably, because we're all focused on the foundations now, it'll lead to a more stable world economic structure, agreements, and we can start to get away from some of the nonsense that's been going on, at least for the last half decade. Sharif?
Thank you, Ali Rice. Ali, can you hear me?
Okay, I can, yeah. So I actually think I agree, and I think it is looking like there's going to be a new enlightenment, and as much as there's been a huge storm that we've gone through, there's been a huge rise of positivity and belief, and And for me, COVID's been kind of like an invisible war, you know. So it's kind of it's. I think obviously I've never been with bombs, but I think one of the things that concerns me as well is that there's been a massive erosion of our freedoms and our liberty, and there's generations of people that have died before us, that, you know, our ancestors that lost their lives to fight for those freedoms. So for me, that's the, you know, for me, freedom's really important. Freedom to choose what you do, where you go, you know, who you spend time with. You know, that's curtailed at the moment, and for me, that's a big question. You know, so kind of our freedoms still need to be reinstated, and as for me, the COVID crisis, for me, it was only the vulnerable people that were really susceptible. And in some ways, we should have shielded the vulnerable. Everyone, you know, continue their daily lives. So I think the mass media is even kind of, there's been huge propaganda to make the virus a much more bigger thing than, you know, it is. Obviously, it's bad for the vulnerable people, but the percentage of people that, you know, that suffer from it and have anything. So for me, I'm obviously in the alternative camp. I'm ashamed to kind of voice my opinion because I truly believe it. So, and I do naturally believe that the body naturally heals, and, you know, that it's got natural immunity, and maybe we should question the way we eat and the way that food's processed. You know, it's kind of, so it all goes back to all the, you know, the ways that things were, and maybe the way that things need to change. So yeah, so it's just being outside and being active, and, you know, it's kind of, you know, so we need to, most people in the States suffer through coronavirus because they've got 2 ailments already because of the way that they live their lives, because they don't have healthier lifestyles. So I think that kind of reflecting on where we've been and how to move forward is really important. So yeah, but no, the age of enlightenment transformation is definitely here, and 2020 for me was that from start to finish.
Thank you. I directly want to go for the concluding remarks for today. Thank you for joining today's sessions, and I want to give special thanks the audience, those who always support us, and speakers always give support World Talent Economy Forums initiative. I directly want to go to Mr. Homestoners, then Mr. Alex, then Dr. William, and finally Ali Rice for their concluding remarks. Mr. Homestoner.
Well, I'm in the sustainability business. I've been in the sustainability business for the last 30 years. We've integrated not only our housing program, but also our lifestyle program. Even our entertainment programs have been tailored to acclimate themselves for the 21st century. I think that all the younger people here that have to really pay attention, particularly in Southeast Asia, where the average age down there is about 30. The new world is your world. It's up to you to do the changes, to adjust, and to do what is necessary to sustain yourselves and to prosper in the 21st century by changing your lifestyle completely, changing the way you think, and changing the way you work, and changing the way you live. So if you do that, you'll live a good life. If you continue down the path that you're on now, it's going to be unfortunate, even though I hate to say that, but it's true. Change, change, change.
Excellent, Mr. Homestoner. Mr. Alex, what's your concluding remarks for today?
Yes, so I liked some of, or most of, or probably all of what Dr. Holmes just said in his concluding remark. There's, and I've said this in other episodes, there's only so much time in the day, every single day. So I think time management is very important. What you're choosing to do with your time, where you're choosing to spend your time, and how you're choosing to spend your money. Through the internet, we have access to just unbelievable knowledge. So, you know, if you're on Facebook, if you're on YouTube, if you're on the internet, if you're watching movies and all of that, through the internet, you have the ability to expand your knowledge and your education through educational YouTube videos, through educational documentaries instead of movies, through balancing your time. So instead of playing sports or watching sports and video games or collectibles and all these other things that people do. I think there's just it's just really important to manage your time in things that help make the world a better place. Over the last few decades, I try to do things that either help people, animals, or the environment. And I do try to help my family and my friends. I try to make the world a better place when I leave this world. So again, time management. So whenever I'm doing something, I'm trying my best to make sure that it's really positive for me and people around me, and it has a low environmental impact. I was really happy with this conversation and the knowledge that we exchanged regarding 3D printed homes. I do think that they are a good direction for our society and communities around the world. I do think that they have the ability to help a lot of people, not only just lower cost, but lower environmental impact, and just housing people in a safe, durable environment. I mean, they have the ability to, I mean, I didn't mention this earlier, but like even there's countries where people get shot at by people driving by, so you can't shoot through a concrete home. It just it can keep people warmer and safer with the climate related disasters of the future. And I do just love the less waste and lower environmental impact. So I think that anyone watching this program, I would encourage a career in 3D printed homes and see how you can take that as a potential career path. And again, thank you, Sharif, for putting together all these wonderful programs, and thank you for all the guest speakers and the people in this forum.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. William.
Okay, I just want to conclude with just two quick items. First, to the over 10 million students that are watching, Sharif, one, I want them to be optimistic and encouraged because they hold the future in their hands, just like Holmes said. Second, though, and I'd been remiss before in earlier programs with not pointing this out, we have current leaders, those that are policymakers, those that are in charge of governments around the world right now, who we don't have to wait for. They don't have to wait for anything. They are in charge, and they can start to make the decisions now as they lead the way, because they are, in fact, the current leaders. And so part of the challenge of change is that we meet the challenge of change so that we can start thinking about things differently. In today's program about 3D printed homes, well, Holmes has a story about steel and iron built homes, and Alex has a story about building tiny homes to house the homeless, things that we can do right now. We don't have to wait sometimes for the future, because it could be at times that the future is actually today. And so for the students out there, welcome. And once again, you never waste time by listening to Dr. Sharif. Second, to the leaders that are out there, the policymakers, you can start doing that stuff right now, because it's not rocket science. It's simply just doing what you can do because you are in charge. And it's always good to be a part of this program. And Ali, it's a real pleasure to meet you, my new friend from the UK.
Thank you. Ali Rice, what are the concluding remarks you want to add for today?
Me?
Yes.
I just think it's been a joy to be part of the conversation. It's been amazing. So thank you. And I'd love to connect with everybody that's on the panel so that we can.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining today's session. Yeah. So, yes, we are trying to reach around 100 million people, and every day, many university in offline, we are communicating, and hopefully by this way, we can grow a proper ecosystem and knowledge-based community. Thank you, everyone, for joining today's sessions. Bye, and take care.